joining in, and let's get started. So let's just take a few moments to just settle in. Maybe just start to notice your breath. And just notice that there's something that is this presence or this feeling of this awareness. Just notice that. Just notice how you're feeling this morning. Maybe you're feeling a little sleepy, you're feeling a little tired, you're feeling your thoughts are running, or you're pretty chill and relaxed. So we just want to get familiar with this presence or the sense of awareness that we are. And I like to use the method or the word I am, which I think is pretty easy to grasp, because there is this sense of amness which is happening all the time, or the sense of I-ness which is happening all the time. So just notice that and get very familiar with it, and keep putting your mind there. I'm just going to respond to a message here. Cool. So bring ourselves back. And, while we're in this class as well, the feeling of this I am, and not as a thought, but as a feeling, as an experience, is happening all the time. I am is the basis of every experience. So even, when we're reading the text, or even when you're looking at the screen, this I am is happening. And we have this ability to notice things. So I can notice the screen, I can notice the table, I can notice the wall, I can notice the room. But then I can also notice this I amness. And so the mind has this ability to focus on things. But at the same time, this I amness is the root of our experience. I'm always am, and then I experience stuff. So once we start to get familiar with this I amness, we can hold on to this feeling throughout the day. There is no moment when this I am is not available for experience. So I just want us to build this muscle of just being present and noticing that I am, and taking this with us wherever we go. And we're going to get into how to build this muscle and how to not get involved too much in what we're seeing. But this is a good precursor to our class today. Cool. So welcome back, everybody. Second class. We kind of went through an introduction of what this work is, what our problem is, what is realization, the problem is ignorance, right? We don't know who we are, and we are given an idea and an experience. And while we are having this experience, we have to be absolutely focused and alert and paying attention and seeing, so that we have a taste and a direct experience of who we are. And once that happens, our false understanding, the fact that I was my mind or I'm my body, falls away. It's not something that is taken from faith or belief. It is a direct experience. So while we are experiencing it, once we have that, then everything else becomes my own understanding. I don't have to remember or rely on some material. It's it's a moment-to-moment experience, and that's the sort of transformation that happens, and that happens in our mind. So our mind is right now confused, and our mind is the one that is going to get the information and the experience, and the mind is the one that will change. The self and who I am is always kind of the same. It's only that the mind is confused. So we were in verse 3, and we're going to continue down our text. I'm going to share my screen. Oops. Cool. So can folks see my screen? All right, so let's do. Cool. So we will go to verse 4 today. Parichinna iva jnanat tannasho sati kevalah swayam prakashate hyatma meghapaye shumaniva. The self appears to be finite because of ignorance. When ignorance is destroyed, it is recognized to be infinite, absolute. The self reveals itself by itself like the sun when the clouds pass away. Cool. So now we are being introduced to why we don't feel like we are the infinite, right? Like if we are the infinite, and if that is always true, then why is it that I don't feel it? Why is it that I don't feel like I am, all powerful and infinite, right? And the reason is because there is some sort of misunderstanding. And, because of misunderstanding, there can be a lot of problems and a lot of confusion. Back in my, like maybe about 4 years ago, I used to be a teacher where I used to teach computer programming to people who didn't have, resources to go to college. So it was like a startup which kind of like helped people from like non-traditional backgrounds learn how to program. And most of these folks had a lot of lack of self-confidence, I would say, because of like the experiences that they've had and the opportunities that they were denied in life. So they're, we in the modern psychological world or the professional world, we call this imposter syndrome, right? Like where we believe that we are not good enough to be in the situation that we are. And when you look at this idea of imposter syndrome, it's not a real thing, right? It's just sort of, it's an individual experience. So, I may have imposter syndrome, somebody else may have imposter syndrome about, let's say you are in a particular role at work and you feel that you don't belong there. So there's this, misunderstanding of who I am and my capabilities and my abilities. And because of that limited belief in myself, I have this idea that I'm not good enough. And the antidote to that idea is that you are given a new idea, which is, no, actually you're good enough. You do belong here. And, you look at evidence, you look at the times when you did well and you improve and you learn new skills and you have this, you sort of build this confidence and you sort of move beyond that false idea. And you recognize that, oh, I just had a false idea, like it was not true. So that's like a sort of an example. And this is the same sort of analogy where, I believe that I am something. And I've believed it for a long time. We live in this world and nobody gives us these ideas that, no, you're not this mind and body. We all subscribe to certain ideas, and because of which we all have a shared understanding, and that's how society is built. But when we analyze it and when we look at it, we will see that it is not so true. And it's just, we've been taking all these ideas of that I am the mind and body on faith, and we can sort of go beyond it, and we can get new ideas that will help us move beyond my limited understanding. So the root of this verse is that there is ignorance, which is there is a misunderstanding. And also it's, the word they use is appears. So it appears to be finite, right? Like my experience is that I am this body and I am this mind. So there is an experience, and it's validating that experience and saying, yes, I agree and I am with you that, you do see the fact that you have a body, you have a mind, you have an emotional nature, but that is not who you are. The false idea is that I believe that I am that because I don't see something beyond that. And the moment I see something beyond that, then I can immediately, my false understanding goes. So that's the next part, which is when the ignorance is destroyed, the moment I recognize that, oh, I'm actually something else, then my entire false understanding automatically falls away. I don't even have to do anything about it. So for example, in the movie Tarzan, when Tarzan was believed that he was a, ape or like a monkey, he lived his entire life like that, right? And the moment he recognized that he is not a monkey, that entire thing automatically fell away. The moment he saw another human being, like, oh, I'm actually that. I'm not a monkey. That didn't change like his behavior and all of that, but his understanding completely changed. So that's kind of, how this is going to work, which is, we are going to go through a process that will work on the mind, and the mind will essentially change because it will essentially get new ideas and experiences which are going to transform the mind, and old ideas are going to fall away automatically. And the clearest analogy is that the self reveals itself by itself. So, we always want to get a direct experience of the self. So we can try an experiment, which is, who is it that is right now looking at the screen? And you would answer and say, I am. That is yourself. That feeling of I looking, that is the self. On top of this experience, we add, I experience the physical world. I'm experiencing my emotions. I'm experiencing thoughts. Those are all things that I'm experiencing. But the thing, or like the instrument, or like the sense of presence that is revealing my entire experience, that is the self. And if you look at the sun, that has the same sort of analogy, where the sun is just shining, right? It's just like shining, and because of this light, it reveals, it can kind of like reveal stuff for us. So that's where the analogy breaks away. But imagine if you were the sun, like if your first person experience was that I am the core of the sun, and the light rays are emanating out and falling on, all the planets and all the stars. That is kind of like, the experience of myself. Like I am like the sun, and my awareness is sort of revealing my entire world. And it's automatic. Like the sun doesn't need to do anything extra to shine. Like that's its nature. Similarly, my nature and your nature and everyone's nature is to aware. Like, I'm always awareing, and I'm aware of, the class right now. I'm aware of the fact that I'm in a room. I'm aware that it's like, 8:15 in the morning. All of that I'm aware of, but something is like revealing all of that. And that is the self, and that is I. So we always want to keep coming back to this I. And right now, there are certain clouds, and the clouds analogy here is that there are thoughts in my mind which are clouding my ability to clearly perceive who I am. My attention is always external. I'm always focusing on my physical world. I'm always focusing on my mind. I'm always focusing on my emotions. So that's like keeping my attention on something external. And what we want to do is we want to like turn our attention to and not focus on the stuff. Because the moment I focus on the stuff, my mind is zapped in the story and in the contents of the stuff. But instead, I would like to turn my attention to see that, can I see where is it where this awareness originates from? Can I find a place? And that's the process. And you're not going to see that place as another object. So, you're not going to see it like this computer screen. You're not going to see it as like this cup, right? Like this cup is very, like I see the cup, but I will never see I in the same way that I see the cup. And the reason is because it's the source from which our experience happens, right? Like, so for example, if I ask you, have you ever seen your eye? I don't think anyone in this world has seen their own eye. We have certainly seen a picture of their I. We've certainly seen a reflection of their I, but they have never seen their I, because the I is by which seeing happens, right? So you can never turn your eye and see itself, right? You can see other things, but you can never see itself. Similarly, I can never aware my own self. I can be aware of other things, but I can aware, I can never aware myself. So in the same way, we're going to go through that process of how to remove our attention on the external stuff, so that what remains is just this I. So all we have to do is remove the clouds, and when the clouds are removed, the sun is self-revealing, like the sun, it just shines, and we will have a clear perception of it. So that's the process we're going to go through. Any thoughts or questions about this? Okay, let us go to the next verse. Ajnana kalashum jivam jnanabhyasadvinirmalam kritva jnanam swayam nashyet jalam katakarenuvat. So constant practice of self-knowledge purifies the egocentric self, which is defiled by ignorance, and having bestowed self-knowledge, it itself disappears, just as the powder of the kataka nut settles down after it has cleaned the muddy water. Okay, so what is the antidote? Like, how do I remove this ignorance? And now the answer is constant practice of self-knowledge purifies the egocentric self. So what is this self-knowledge? So self-knowledge is essentially, turning our attention to not focus on the stuff, but instead just be in this experience of I am. And that in the beginning is very hard, because our entire life our minds have been trained to just focus on stuff, right? It's now we are going against the stream, right? We have all these grooves in our brain which want to do certain things, but we want to go against the stream, and where we want to turn our attention and introvert our attention, like my teacher says. You want to reverse our attention, so that we don't, our attentive faculties don't point to stuff externally, but it points to stuff internally, which is, where is this experience happening? What is this I? And trying to search for this I. And the search for this I, single point, if our mind can be single pointed, where I can search for this I, that means I have to deny everything which is not the I. And that's the process that we're going to go through, where we're going to deny everything and not focus our attention on anything that is not the self, which is not the I. And this practice of once we sort of can see that, yes, I am this I am this space of awareness. Once we see that, we're going to rest in that place, and our mind is going to sort of keep going back there, where I have this clear perception that I am the self, I am this presence, I am this awareness. And that experience changes the mind, because the mind is essentially just a firm collection of thoughts and beliefs and ideas. And as my attention and my awareness and my sense of attention kind of rests in this awareness, this concrete mind starts to sort of break away. And because, it realizes that, wow, there's this other place that exists. All these ideas that I am the mind, I'm the body, and all of that holds the mind together. And the moment we sort of rest in this other place, this mind starts to dissolve. And the next part of the verse is the egocentric self, which is defiled by ignorance. So here, the word is, nirmalam, which literally translates to dirt. And when something is dirty, I don't, we have this sense of moralistic standpoint of something is clean and something is dirty. I don't think we want to look at it from the moralistic aspect. It's more about what is the self and what is not the self. anything that is useful and anything that is not useful. Like that's the way we want to look at it, and not from a perspective of whether it is like good and bad, because those things imply like judgments. This is all about a process, right? So we don't care about whether something is morally right or morally wrong. We just want to avoid anything that is not useful at this point. So anything that is, at the level of the mind and at the level of thoughts, if our attention is always on the mind and always on the stories that the mind is projecting, that's not useful in this practice, because the practice here and the method here is to not focus our attention on the mind and focus it on something else, and try to see that what is it, or where is this I, or like, get this direct experience and be there for a long enough time where the mind is fundamentally changed. And once this sort of mind rests in this place and practices the self-knowledge, and once it has this firm understanding that, yes, I am this awareness, I am this self, the mind dissolves. And the analogy here is that, there is this, this book was written in, the 8th century CE, or even maybe earlier, because these verses are like from different places even before that. So, there wasn't any water purifiers back then. And, they apparently had this nut, which when ground and mixed with muddy water got attached to the dirty particles. And because of like, some sort of process, it all settled to the bottom of the container that the water was in. And because of which you can then like, pick out the clean water. So that's the same idea. So like you're given certain ideas for the mind, and the mind is full of thoughts and full of emotions and full of desires, and and my attention is always on these things, right? And we're given certain ideas which will essentially mix with our existing desires and my thoughts, and what will happen is that they will sort of settle down. And once it settles down, I can clearly see who I am. And it's not about I will have to do anything extra after that to see who I am. It is self-revealing, because the self is self-revealing, like we were told earlier, which is, how do I know I am, right? Like, do I have to do anything extra to say I am, or like to be, like that's, my experience that I am is true all the time. Like there's no moment where I'm not, even when I'm sleeping or when I'm dreaming, I can say, yes, I am, because I was dreaming. And because I was experiencing this other world in my dream, I was flying and, it was really beautiful, all of that. But the basis of that experience is I am. So this I am is happening all the time. It's just that I don't know what I am. I can be a human in this experience. In my dream, I may be something else. I am a man in this experience, but like in my dream, I can be a woman. Anything can happen, right? Like, so my body and my mind can be different at different times, but this I am sense is happening all the time. And it's the same I amness is happening. Like I don't have to do anything extra to create it. Like I may have to like sleep to have this, dream experience. I have to wake up to have this waking experience, but I don't have to do anything for this I am experience. So like that's the only constant, or that's the only thing that's common across all my experiences. So, so this practice of like going to that place, like just feeling this presence of I am, is this practice of self-knowledge. And it's difficult because the mind wants to think about stuff. We all have this experience of when we try to meditate, my attention is always on my thoughts. And my practice is to keep coming back. So we want to build this muscle of how do I keep coming back to this I am, and feeling the sense of awareness that I am. So that's the process. Any questions or thoughts about this one? All right, let's keep going. So verse 6. Samsara swapnatul yohi ragadveshat isankulam swakale satyavadbhati prabodhe satya sadbhavet. So the world, which is full of attachments, aversions, and so on, is like a dream. It appears to be real as long as the dream continues, but becomes unreal when one wakes up, when true wisdom dawns. Okay, so now we're describing the world, right? And the world is going to be different for different people. Like my world is very different than your world. Your world is very different than somebody else's world. And the reason is because my world consists of my memories, it consists of my desires, it consists of my experiences, and all of those things shape my world, right? Like two people can never have the same experience of the world. Like I have my own sort of desires and memories that tell me, wow, I like coffee over tea, right? Like, and somebody may like tea over coffee. So their world is very fundamentally different than my world, and all of them are, from an individual standpoint. So the world, so we are always looking at the self from an individual aspect, right? Like I am trying to seek uh, liberation, you are trying to seek liberation, so you have to look at the world from your experience, and I have to look at the world from my experience. And here we're saying that the world is full of attachments, aversions, and so on, which is, when we look at our problem, most of the problems are because of my attachments to things that I have in this world. And the word here for attachment is raga, which is like this sense of craving. Like I need something. I cannot live without something, and like if I don't have it, then I'm going to be miserable. Like that's the sense of like attachments. There's a distinction between attachments and desire, which is, desire has this more of like a much more cleaner and like cooler nature or essence. So I can have a desire to like want to go on a walk, and like that's pretty okay, but like I have this desire that I must be liked by my boss, right? Like there's a distinction in the two kinds of, like, the flavors are slightly different. One is more open and cool, and the other one is a little bit more hot. And when the insistent sort of desires don't come true, that sort of like generates a lot more heat, right? Like we get a little bit more upset, a little bit more angry. So there's this sort of sense of passion and like intensity in these like desires, and they're like a little bit more concrete. So these attachments are kind of strong, and the more we sort of focus energies on them, the stronger they get. It's kind of like these, the rope, knot. The more you pull at the knot, the tighter it gets. And the only way to like release the knot is to like, let go of the tension, and then you kind of like, have the ability to like unknot it. So it's the same idea. So, so we have this sense of attachment, and then the converse to that is the aversions, right? Like I really dislike something. Like if something comes in my experience, like I get extremely triggered, and my body kind of like becomes a little like stiff. So there's this, and you can kind of feel the intensity of like something that's happening, and I'm really averse to the situation. So those are sort of like where we need to pay attention to, and we want to acknowledge that, wow, I have all of these aversions, and the world is full of that. And here we are given another tool, which is like, or a process, or a method actually, to say, look at this world like it is like a dream. It's not, to say that it is a dream, right? Like, when you look at like when we all have dreams, I have dreams in the night, you have dreams in the night, and in your own dream, you are creating the dream, right? Like you are the god of your dream. You can totally think of yourself as the god of your dream. I can imagine I want to be, and like some people have this ability to like even, be control the dream, and like kind of have like a sense that they are dreaming while they're dreaming. So you feel like you're literally the god of the dream, and you can go wherever you want, and you can create whatever you want. So in that sense, the dream of your individual experience, you are the god. But in this dream, if this is a dream, you're not a god in your dream, right? It's not your dream. You are certainly a participant in the dream, but you're not the god of the dream. And that's where like a lot of people kind of get a little confused, which is, if this world is a dream, then why is it not like the dream, that I have every night? And it's more like it's an analogy, which is like it's trying to make you not pay attention to so much of what the world is. Just like when you have your own individual dream at night, when you wake up in the morning, you don't spend your entire day thinking about the dream and analyzing it and feeling sad about the things that happened and feeling really ecstatic about the things that went well in the dream, right? You just said, oh, wow, that was a weird dream. And then you move on. You don't kind of keep harping on the dream. And in the same way, you want to like look at this world like that, which is like, oh, experiences are happening. I am participating, but I'm not harping on stuff. Like I enjoy, I experience, and then I move on. Like, every moment is like, oh, I just woke up from this dream, right? Like I had this amazing experience. I went out with my friends, I had a blast, but that's it. And then that, when I am now in my house, that experience of hanging out with my friends feels and came about in the same way as a dream, where, I had an experience, it was pretty cool, and it's done. Now I'm in my house, and this is like I'm experiencing whatever's going on in my house. And then the next morning it's a new day. The previous day feels like a dream. So that's kind of like how we want to think about it. And the moment we keep reflecting and thinking about the past, the dream will continue to be real, right? Like, so for example, if something terrible happened a year ago or 10 years ago, but if I keep thinking about that experience, my experience of it will be that it is absolutely real. I cannot get over it. Like we all have certain memories and experiences or fights or like some relationship that we screwed up, and we still keep harping upon it. And why does it feel so real is because for the last how many ever years we've been thinking about it, we have been giving it more and more and more energy, and that experience is becoming more and more and more concrete. And the only reason it is concrete is because I have given it the energy by thinking about it. The moment I stop thinking about it, it's gone. So a very clear example is if I ask you, what did you eat 10 years ago? No, I'm sure nobody knows. Like, what's the date today, right? It's March 6th. What did you eat, Feb 6th, which was a month ago, for breakfast? Probably have no idea. But like some emotionally charged experience, like, let's say you had a terrible breakup and you still keep thinking about it, you will have like very vivid memories of like how that experience was. Why? Because you've just been thinking about it a lot more. So that proves to us that things that I give attention to and I continue to think about feels a lot more real. But, if I ask you, what did you eat for breakfast on, Feb 6th, that feels like a dream, because I'm like, oh, did it happen? Like, what was it? Was it, cereal? Was it like, a piece of omelet? Like, I have no idea. So that's like, same way, like, what did I dream, last night? Like, what was it? I kind of have a memory, but I can't really remember. It was so vivid, like when I, just woke up, but now I completely forgotten it. That's kind of like the same way we want to think about this, which is this entire world of experiences are happening in the now, right? Like everything is now, now, now. The moment it's done, it feels like a dream, because after that point, it's just memory. In the same way I remember a dream, the same way I can remember this past experience. So once I have this firm understanding that, wow, this world is only happening moment to moment, everything else is just psychological, then it becomes much more easier to not pay so much attention to the world. We have this sense of there is this existential reality and then there's this psychological reality. And most of my time is like on this psychological reality that I keep building. And I forget that there is this existential reality that is happening moment to moment all the time. It is on. And if I can move from my psychological world to this existential world, that's when we wake up. And that's when true wisdom dawns. And we have this power to kind of like not pay so much attention. So that's the sort of energy that we have to put, which is our mind is naturally going to go towards my psychological reality, which is a dream, because I'm living in the memories, I'm thinking about stuff, which is all psychological. And I want to move away from psychological reality to an existential reality, which is the now. And wake up, because that's where, you know, all of the joy is. And we will get to all of, like, you know, why we want to do that and all of that. We will get to all of that. So question about this or thoughts? Everyone is quiet today. Cool. Let us do the next one. Tavat satyam jagat bhati shuktikara jatam yatha yavan gyayate brahmasa sarvadhishtanam advayam. So the world appears to be real, so long as Brahman, the non-dual substratum of the entire creation, is not realized. It is like the illusion of silver in the mother of pearl. So, so again, we are using this word called appears, right? So there is definitely an appearance that this world is. You know, so nobody is denying that the world is. What this verse is saying is that it is different than what I think it is. I think that it is a world which is separate from me. It has joy producing properties and misery producing properties. And, you know, I have to strive to get things. You know, all of that, I have a bundle of ideas, and all of them have been psychologically created, you know, in the time that I've been alive. And now it appears extremely real and separate from me. But this is saying that it's a false understanding. And that false understanding is going to continue to persist until we have a new understanding, right? Which is, it is not that. So until we have that experience, this false understanding is going to persist. You know, the analogy is like, you know, if I believe that mangoes are terrible and they don't taste, you know, like for, you know, for the first 30 years of my life, or let's say mango is like a terrible idea, but let's say, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, going to certain countries is extremely unsafe, right? Like we all subscribe to certain realities, which is we get fed that, oh, maybe going to India is like very dangerous. You know, there's so much like crime and all of that. And a lot of people subscribe to that, even though they have never directly experienced it, but through, you know, media and like news and all of that, they kind of build this their own understanding. And, you know, it may be completely incorrect, but for them, it definitely feels real, which is, you know, this place is extremely unsafe and I don't want to go there. But they have not had their own experience. And the moment you experience something, then you can, like, you know, all of your beliefs and faith, all of that falls away, because after that point, it's like your own understanding. So you don't have to like talk from like some sort of a textbook, right? Where you have to remember something that you read. It's more from like, oh yeah, I experienced that. That was kind of weird. Or like, that was fun. You can talk from your own experience. Then, you know, all of your false understanding automatically falls away. So that's kind of the same way, where like, until we have our own direct experience of this, all of this, you know, may not make any sense. And like, you know, all of your old ideas will continue to persist. You may still think that the world is real and separate, and, you know, and you have to fight to get stuff that you really want, and you have to struggle, and you have to take care of yourself, you know, from an ego standpoint. All of that you may believe, but those ideas will not fall away until we have this direct experience, because until then it's just theory, right? And what we want is this sort of experiential understanding. And the whole process is like to get you to an experiential understanding. And it's a method. So we use this. So, you know, looking at this world as a dream is a method. It is not the end goal. It's a method so that you can directly realize the self. And once you realize the self, then you can drop the method. You don't have to keep thinking that, oh, this world is a dream. Like, you know, that's just a tool that we use to get to a place. And once we're there, we just drop the tool. the analogy here is the illusion of the silver in the mother of pearl. It's like, when I guess like this is like, the image of like having like something in a shell, like it looks very promising, and it's like, oh, I want something, I want to be rich. So you like kind of like go out on this journey and try to find these like mother of pearls, and you see something that's shiny, but it's not really shiny. It looks like it's shiny. So similarly, this world kind of appears and looks attractive and separate from me, and I want to like engage in it, to do stuff which is totally fine, but it doesn't have the lasting properties, which is like it doesn't really give me what I want, and I will keep going back into the world, because that's this root of my problem, is this ignorance and this firm belief that this world is going to give me what I want. But we keep trying, right? Like, and a lot of people do it for their entire life, and then they die, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we have come to a place where we can kind of get a sense that the world is limited from that standpoint, the physical world is limited, where it can offer me few things, but it cannot give me what I want. Because what is it that I want? I want is freedom. And I want to be sort of liberated, or like, all these words we use, but essentially what I want is happiness and peace and being ecstatic. Like those are the things that I want. And if I want to get it from the world, I can try. But the question is like, does it work? How long does it last? Is there something that is permanent? And that's a good question. And this work says that yes, there is something permanent, and it is not out there. It is right here, right now. Because if something has to be permanent, it cannot be something that I gain, right? Because the moment I gain something, I can lose it. So something that is permanent has to be something that is there all the time. And then we start the search of like, what is it that is there all the time? Is my world there all the time? Like those are the sort of questions we start to ask, and we start to build our own understanding of what is it that is there all the time? What is it that I cannot deny? And all, in the previous class, we, I think somebody asked a question of like, there are these different paths that you can take. Absolutely. You can take many paths to get to this place, but there's only one door. So like the way my teacher frames it is like, there is this mountain that we're all trying to climb. And at the peak, there is a temple, and there's many different paths that you can take. I wouldn't even say there's a temple, there's a door. And there's this many paths that you can take to get to the door. But through the door, there is only one path, because that you have to walk through the door, right? Like there's nothing else you really do. I think somebody is not on mute, so I'm going to mute. So there's only one door. So the only thing you can do is open the door and walk through it. But to get to the door, you can take all these different paths. You can kind of do prayer practice, you can do concentration exercises, you can do like physical strenuous exercises, many things that you can do. But once you get to the door, the only way through is going through the door, and the doorway to your own self is I. Because all the different traditions are all going to come down to the final step, which is walking through the door, and that's like looking at I. And this has nothing to do with like particular path or particular tradition. It transcends time, transcends even space, because our experience of I, my experience of I is the same as your experience of I, is the same as everybody else's experience of I. And that's the door that we want to walk through, which is the door of just seeing what is the nature of this I. What is it? Is it big? Is it small? Is it, does it have color? Does it have taste? So those are the questions we want to ask, and you're going to like, it's not from like it's not about thinking so much. It's more about seeing, because this I is happening all the time. I am is happening all the time. And while this experience is happening, we need to pay attention to that experience. And only way to pay attention to that experience is if our mind is quiet. And our mind can only be quiet when, we don't subscribe so much to the world. Because if we keep subscribing to the world, our attention is going to be on the world. And it's going to be very hard to pay attention to the I. Which is why, the prerequisites, if you remember, in verse 1 or something, was like somebody who has purified their mind. And that means that somebody whose mind is kind of quiet, because, a quiet mind is the only mind that's going to be able to see the I clearly. And a mind which is very noisy is not going to be able to do that. So our practices need to also kind of include ways to quieten the mind. And we're going to get some tools to be able to do that. But that's the idea. We want to like move from the world of thoughts and objects, which is in the world of, in physicality, to the world of I. And that's the process we're going to take. Any thoughts about this?
I just wanted to comment on what you were, the verses, the world is like the illusion of silver in the mother of pearl. Mm-hmm. And I just remember that when William Blake was asked about, don't you, when you see the sun rise, do you not see a round disk of fire, someone like a genie or something? And he replied, oh, no, I see an innumerable company of the heavenly ghosts crying, glory, glory, glory is the Lord Almighty. So I thought, wow, this is the same verse. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and everybody can look at something in such a different way, and there's beauty in everything that we can see. So true. Cool. So let's do any other thoughts about this? All right, let's do the next one. Upadane khiladhare jaganti parameshware sargasthiti layayanti buddhani va varini. So like bubbles in the water, the worlds rise, exist and dissolve in the Supreme Self, which is the material cause and the support of everything. Cool. So now that we have, given this idea that this world is like a dream, we are given sort of the next idea, which is like, why is it like a dream? And if you look at our dream experience, we go to sleep and then suddenly we are in the dream, right? Like it has arisen from nowhere, and then we are experience the dream for a certain amount of time, and then we wake up and then it's gone, right? So like there was an experience, it existed for a while and it was gone. So there's this, so everything that we perceive in this world has this property of being, which is sort of rising. It rises from someplace, it exists for a while, and it goes away. So we can do an experiment, which is, let's close our eyes and we can think of a strawberry. Is that my teacher's favorite fruit? So he always says, like, think of a strawberry. So like, where did that strawberry come from? It just appeared, kind of like a bubble. It just appeared from our unconscious, and now it's in our consciousness. So you can see the strawberry, you can see the color of it. It's red, has all these like juicy, it's like very ripe, almost feel like eating into it. You can almost imagine slicing into it and like juice coming out from it. It's red, very sweet. So all of that experience that we just created in this mind came out of nothing, right? So it just appeared. And while you were paying attention to the strawberry of your mind, it existed for you, in your experience. And then now that I'm, like pay attention to the screen, the strawberry of your mind is gone. And you can recreate it if you want by, focusing on it. And the same thing will happen. It'll rise up from like the unconscious. It'll exist for a while. You will see it for a moment and then it'll be gone. So that is the nature of everything in this world, be it a thought, be it an emotion. So, think of an emotion where, or rather next time, pay attention to when you feel an intense emotion. So maybe it's like frustration or anger or joy. You hug a friend and you're like, feeling all the warm, fuzzy feelings. Like all of that also is an experience, right? It arises from nothing. Like a moment before that, there was no feeling of fuzziness. But the moment you hug your friend, there's a feeling of fuzziness. Now, that exists for a while, and then, maybe a minute or two later, it's gone. So that's from the sense of emotions. If you look at physicality, like, I imagine that, I'm drinking some tea in this cup, but this cup existed only at a certain amount of time. So I imagine, like, I bought this cup like 8 years ago. Maybe it existed, like, before that, but 50 years ago, it didn't exist. And it came about and it's going to exist for a while until the cup breaks, and then it's going to be gone. Right? So like even physical objects have the same property. Like they arise, they exist for a while, and until the energy required to hold it in place exists, it'll exist. The moment the energy falls away, it dissolves. Right? So like the same thing about the thoughts of my mind. If there is enough energy to hold something in place, like if I really want to keep thinking about a strawberry, I have enough energy in myself to keep that strawberry in my mind in place, right? So if we have a memory that's bothering us, some sense of guilt or some sense of, regret, those thoughts and memories have, like, I subscribe to those thoughts and I give it energy. So there's enough energy to keep those memories in place. And I keep giving it more and more energy because I somehow am very sort of tied to those emotions or memories or whatever it is. And that memory exists. And it'll exist so long as I keep giving it attention. The moment I stop giving it attention, it'll dissolve. And where does it dissolve? That's a good question, right? Like, where do all these things come up from and where do they go into? We have never sort of looked at that, right? Like we have this ability to think, we have this ability to feel emotions, but where do they arise from? Are they coming from my physical body? Is an emotion stored in my leg? Anger is in my knee, and happiness is in my my left knee, and sadness is in my elbow. Is there like a physicality to it? Like, have you ever looked at that? And we'll start to see that no, it doesn't really arise from a specific point, right? There's no location to it. It just appears, and it's the same way. It just appears. It exists for a while until the energy required to hold it in place is there. And after that, it dissolves. And that's not just true for these thoughts and emotions. It is true for the physical material universe as well. Think of think of a company, like a business entity. The business entity exists only until the energy in the employees exist in order to support the company. The moment the energy and the motivation is gone, the company falls, right? So there's these laws, right? There are laws that hold this world in place. Like, this is not a chaos. This is a world full of laws. And if we understand certain fundamental laws, we will see that there's this symmetry across all of these different dimensions of, mind, emotions, thoughts, physical world, all of it. And this universe is intelligent, and we are part of this universe. And that intelligence that reverberates in this entire world is the same intelligence that holds my body together, the same intelligence that holds my thoughts together. There is no sort of distinction. And once we can tap into that, our world will change. So we got to see that this world appears. And what is the material cause of it? The material cause of it is this consciousness, this awareness. This awareness is the source of it all. And this awareness is the one that creates all of it. So if I ask you, what is the material cause of the strawberry that you created in your mind? Your answer would be, it's the mind, right? So, and what's the material cause of the mind? That's a good question. So we will sort of go into that, where like, the only thing that is true is the self, which is this I. And this I, and the material of this I is the material of this universe. And it just appears in different forms, right? Like, it's like if you think of like the physical law, which is energy can never be created nor destroyed, it just like transforms and looks different. It's the same idea where like, things are combining and changing, and new things get created, old things go away, but like the material cause of it all is this self and is this I. And we don't want to take this by faith. This is just a theory and a hypothesis. So play with this in your own experience and your own lab of your mind, and see if it is true. See if, if this thoughts and emotions don't rise from nothingness and go into nothingness. See if that is true. See if there is a place that you can find some source, external source, where these thoughts are coming from, or these emotions are coming from. And disprove this, because until that happens, it's just going to be, an intellectual game for everyone. All right, any thoughts about this one? Okay, let us do the next one. We have some time. Satchit Atmanyanusyoti yute nitye Vishnau prakalpitaha Vyaktyayo vividha sarva hatake katakadivat. So the entire world of things and beings is only a mental projection upon the substratum, which is the eternal all-pervading Vishnu, whose nature is existence consciousness, just as all the different ornaments are made of the same gold, made out of the same gold. All right, so here again, we're continuing down this idea that what is this world, right? So much of our attention is on the world. And this is trying to give us, certain ideas that will break our sort of attention and our focus on the world and bring it to the self. Because our attention is on the world because there is this deep-rooted belief that this world is separate and concrete and real and joy-producing. And the only way my attention is going to be broken is if I can get a new idea which is better, which is like, oh, there's this other place where really joy is. Go there and see for yourself if that is true. And this is what this is trying to give us, which is trying to tell us that, yes, this world is kind of like a mental projection. Our psychological reality is what it's referring to. So whenever we think of this world, we don't want to look at it from a physical world standpoint. It's more of like, what is my psychological world? We want to move from the psychological reality to an existential reality. And how do we do that? Is by understanding what is my psychological reality, which is my subjective world of thoughts and emotions, my beliefs, my insistence on certain things. All of those things are psychological realities. And that entire world is a projection, right? So when I say projection, it's like whenever I see things in this world, like I've had this experience myself, which is, moment I see something familiar, I will project my experience of the past onto something familiar. So like the moment my friend tells me, oh, I went and saw this beautiful, beach the other day. Moment he says that, something from the past about my experience of a beach comes in, which will try to fit their description. And the mind is constantly doing that, where it's using memories as a way to understand what is happening. And that is terrible, because what's happening is I'm missing the entire point. I'm living again in my psychological reality. And that's what this is talking about, which is we want to stop living in this psychological reality, where we keep using memory, and living in the world of memory. We definitely want to use memory, to solve problems. Memory is useful. It is a function of the mind. We have a capacity to remember like insane amount of things, but we don't want to live in that place. We want to live in the existential reality, which is what is happening now, not what has happened. So if we can understand that, we can kind of like see that most of our psychological reality is just projections, which is, if you look at a person, you're reminded of somebody who looks like that. If somebody says something, you're reminded of something that somebody else said, which is very similar to what this person is saying. So it's all about, fitting stuff with memory. Instead, we want to drop this memory and just pay attention to the now and what is happening in the now. And this verse is saying that this entire world and these beings, like what we experience, the way we experience it today, is a projection. And it's a projection on this substratum, which is, so, every experience has a basis, right? Like I mentioned, every experience has the basis that I am. I am is the basis. So I am aware of this class. So I am is the basis, and the class is the content, right? So right now that this is happening. So you are aware that you're sitting. So I am is the basis and sitting is the content. So I'm aware that I am sitting. So there is this substratum, and this substratum is what they're talking about, which is, this is all pervading, because there is no place where this I am is not true for my own self, because the I am is the fundamental root for this entire world to exist. The moment this I am is no longer there, this world is not there either. But that's just a theoretical concept, right? Like there's no time when I have not been on, right? There's no off switch for this I aming all the time. So that's why they say this I am is all pervading, because wherever I go, there I am. I change my city and I move from Oakland and I move to New York. I am is still there. I move to a different universe. Like let's say I change, like leave Earth and go to a different planet. I am is still there. So there's no place I can go to where this I am is not going to be there for me. And we want to look at it from a direct subjective experience, which is I am is happening for me. Wherever I go, I am is going to be there, because that's going to be the basis of my experience. And we want to get familiar with this I am. My entire life, I've been looking at the next aspect, which is I am aware of stuff. So I've been looking at stuff because that's what's been most exciting, not realizing that this I am is the one that is actually the cause of my experience. So what is the nature of this I am? We have been trying to understand what is the nature of the world. Some things make me happy, some things make me miserable, and I attach joy-giving properties to stuff. So like if I really love, going to the beach, I will think, oh, it's the beach that makes me happy. And, staying at home because of COVID makes me unhappy, right? That is, we may all come to that conclusion, but that's actually not what's happening. What's happening is when I go to the beach, my mind is no longer on like the world. I'm not thinking about COVID. I'm not thinking about, how it's been depressing and how like, I can't meet my friends, I can't meet my family. All of those thoughts have sort of disappeared for a moment when I'm on the beach, enjoying the beach, which is why the beach feels really good. And when I come back home, now all the thoughts have come back. And now I think of the beach and I'm like, oh man, the beach was really good, where I did not have my attention on all these other thoughts. So it's actually the lack of thoughts, which was actually very good, not what the experience was. But this false understanding led me to believe that that the beach has joy-giving properties. So we're going to get into this a little bit more, in the future classes, but just to give you a little bit of taste. But that's the nature of this I, is existence and consciousness and even bliss, you can say. I feel really blissful when I'm in the moment and having a blast, at the beach or, in the mountains or like hanging out with friends, because in those moments, my attention is not on like my psychological reality. My attention is on the existential reality, which is what is happening moment to moment to moment. The moment I go into the psychological reality, my bliss kind of disappears. And that is a very clear proof of the fact that psychological reality is needed for misery. The moment we can get rid of psychological reality, there is no misery available. Like misery is unavailable if we are in the existential reality. Misery is only available when we are in our psychological reality. So I kind of went onto a tangent here, but I think this is very important to talk about, which is going to be the basis of some of our next classes. So just like completing what this verse says, so, just like all the different ornaments are made out of the same gold. So, we're getting into the mechanics of like the material cause of this world. So like, we can say, the world has trees, it has, humans, it has animals, it has physical stuff. They all appear different, right? But what we are looking at is the material. What is the material for all of this? Just like you can say, the gold is the material to make bangles, to make a necklace, to make an earring, to make a nose ring, to make like a brick, to make like a, like a statue. All these things are different appearances of the gold. And you can say, yes, the necklace is separate from the ring. It's separate from the statue. You can say all of these things from a language standpoint, right? You can name them differently. You can give them different concepts, but the material is that it is gold. So like kind of the same, like, physical concept, like energy can never be created or destroyed. The same way, these are all like reflections of the true reality, which is this material cause of the world, which is I, consciousness, just appears to be all of this other stuff. That's what this is saying. And we will get into that in the future classes. So we have about 25 minutes left. So I want to make sure we have some time to meditate, and also any questions and thoughts that we will have. Any thoughts or questions? Okay. Will this make sense? Like, I've said a lot. Feel like we did what, 6 verses today? How is everyone doing? Is this something you're able to relate to?
Yeah, absolutely, Puneet. I can totally relate to 98% of it. I think once you go down this path of understanding this, the self and sort of being with the self, and I think the challenge that I always have is just it's great to, in a meditation, be with yourself and sort of be aware of the observer. But then as you get caught up in life, you just get caught up in all these other things. And that's always the challenge for me, is like, when you're not in that space of meditation, how do you think about staying present and just keeping the perspective of the observer? So I'm curious of what the practices are as we get into this work.
Excellent point. I think everyone has that experience of like, yes, I feel great on my meditation seat, but the moment I engage in the world, like my old habits sort of come back. And yeah, there's practices that we're going to learn on how to look at the world in the same way that we look at ourselves. But the first question we always want to answer is, who am I? Because until I am very clear about who I am, the world is going to be very, will lure us. So that's the first thing we always focus on, which is why, like, meditation, all of that is prescribed. But once we kind of are very clear that, yes, I am this space of consciousness, then we move into the second question, which is, what is this world? And, I know in this class, we kind of spend a lot of time talking about the world, but most of this book, we're going to be talking about the I, and like building practices on how to get to this I and how to become rooted in this I. And then when we go out in the world, this part of my experience, so I like the word like being, like, so our sense of being keeps on growing, and our sense of acting, or like, the action aspect of our mind, is also there, but like we want to keep growing our being so that even in the world, my sense of I is very strong and loud, where this I am is a moment to moment experience that I can easily experience even while I'm fully engaged, because a part of my mind is always there and a part of my mind is engaged. So you can say like the surface level of my mind is active and it's working and doing stuff, but there is this deeper part of my mind which is just like resting in this I, and that's kind of the muscle that we want to build. And that can only happen when, in my meditation, it is very clear to me that yes, I am this space, and it takes, an instant for me to go to that place. And, when I come into the world, my old habits are going to come back. I'm going to like try to like get in too engaged and like too lost in like my desires and thoughts, but I will still have some capacity to come back because my meditation practice would like give me the support that I need to, recognize it, that it's happened, and bring it back. So, not only do we do the meditations, but we kind of take that practice even to the world and do it in the world. So we're going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. The one thing that helps me today is just because I have a practice of breath related work.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the one thing that I find I can ground myself in when I'm like at work and I'm like replying to emails and stuff, and there's like a lot of concentration, thinking, right? And so the breath is something that I go back to. And so, and that as a tool for me to sort of, stay embodied. And I'm just curious, like this work, this sort of philosophy or approach, is I guess, to what extent is breath a part of it? In terms of the actual practice itself?
Yeah. So the reason why breath is prescribed is because, like, you kind of alluded to it, is that the breath is in the body and the body is always in the now, right? We always want to get, so whenever we live in the psychological aspect, our attention is on the world, right? Which, I mean, is on our inner world, inner psychological world, which is like my thoughts, or like I'm thinking about something in the future, I'm planning. And that's like more of the unconscious kind, which is like, I want to stay, focused on whatever activity, but my mind is just pulling me away from it. We may obviously want to consciously think about stuff and from the past and the memory, and that's a separate thing. But I'm speaking more of like this, automatic, unconscious pulling that happens. And the breath is a great tool to bring us back because the breath is in the now. So it's kind of like this training our mind to kind of keep coming back. And that's good. But the breath is only good to the fact that it brings us back. But what we need to go is one level closer, to the self, which is like this presence, like, this presence that I am aware, because the breath kind of like brings us so close to that place, which is like in the now, but it doesn't get us to the place that I am aware. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we're still focusing on something external. Because, the breath is also something that is an experience, right? Which is great, which is like taking me away from the psychological world, which is, some memory or some, let's say it's like a terrifying memory, like it's taking you away from that, but it's still not giving you, taking you to the I, you know what I mean? It's taking you just close to the door, but what we want is to walk the door and get to the other side and become familiar with that place, because you're like, oh, this world is cool and great and blissful. And how long it takes us to get there is, depends on a bunch of stuff, like, like it can be very easy to do it in meditation, but may be harder to do it when you're in the world because of like the intensity of the experience that's happening, or like, maybe you're at work and like somebody's like telling you to like do something quickly and you get kind of stressed. So like, it just depends on the situation, but as we get more and more familiar with the practice and rooted, it'll become easier.
Okay. No, sounds good. I can totally relate to that for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Cool. So let us do a meditation. We have about 15 minutes. I shall stop sharing. All right. So take a moment to sit up straight if you've been horizontal. So you just want to make sure your head, neck, and back are aligned. Just gently resting. So you're not feeling any sort of strain on your neck. Your head feels like it's resting gently, and you're feeling relaxed. I want to start by taking a few deep conscious breaths. And just notice how the breath feels. If you're feeling any stress or any strain in any part of your body, just breathe into that part and imagine on the exhale that you're releasing it all and letting it go. Breathing is a great way to bring your attention to the now. The breath is always happening in the now. It helps us move away from our attention on the thoughts and on the body. So you want to notice that you have this ability to pay attention. That I can pay attention to my breath. I can pay attention to sensations. I can pay attention to sounds. So I am aware, which is why I can do these things. And my sense of attention can move, can keep moving. So in this meditation, we're going to learn a new practice. We're going to learn this practice called subject-object discrimination. And what this is going to teach us is that in every experience, there is a subject and there is an object. So if I'm paying attention to the breath is the object, and I is the subject. So I am aware of the breath. If I pay attention to sounds, the sounds are the object, and I is the subject. So I am not the sound because I am the one who experiences the sound. So I cannot be the sound. Similarly, I am not the breath either because I'm the one that sees the breath. So we want to see that in every experience or anything that we can perceive, there is the subject that is perceiving it. However close this may be, there's always this distance that I perceive the object. So there's a distance. So if I can perceive my breath, there is a distance. The breath is in the body, and I am aware of the body. Now, if I perceive an emotion, let's say I'm feeling a little tired, or I'm feeling a little agitated, I perceive this agitation, or I perceive this tiredness. There is this distance, maybe lesser than the breath, but yet there is this distance. Now, if I ask you to think about what you ate this morning or this afternoon or for dinner, it appears as a thought. But this relationship still holds. I am aware of this thought. So this distance is even lesser, like it's closer to me than the breath is, but yet it is still away. It is still away. It is not me. I certainly can see it, certainly a part of me, but it is not me. So we want to notice this whenever our mind gets engaged in a thought or a story. We can use this tool to say, I am aware of this story, and not as a mechanical thought. You want to really notice and see, oh yeah, the story is separate from me. I am aware of it. So I am not the story. And the moment we notice this separation, our involvement and our we come out of this story. We come back. We were super zapped in and we get unzapped. So we want to keep using this tool whenever we see that, or when we realize that, oh wow, I was so involved and lost in my theme of thinking, or in a memory, or in some future thingy, when it's unconscious. When you're consciously thinking about it, you can still be aware that, yes, I am aware that I am the subject, and this is my thought or my planning is an object. That's fine. But we want to use this tool when we try when our unconscious starts working and we get lost in thinking. So this is subject-object discrimination. We want to drop the thoughts when we can recognize that we've been lost. You want to keep coming back to this I. And not as a thought, but as a feeling that I, this presence, this awareness, or this consciousness, language falls short, but there is this revealing aspect of us where we can reveal things in my experience. So this, keep coming back here. The moment you notice that you're lost in the theme of the thinking, remember that I am experiencing the thoughts, and drop the thoughts. slowly bring your attention back to objective reality. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. So we're going to end our class with the chant. And feel free to join or feel free to just listen as well. Make sure you're on mute so it doesn't interfere if you want to chant. Yogarato va bhogarato va Yogarato va bhogarato va Sangarato va sangavihina Sangarato va sangavihina Yasya brahmani ramate chittam Yasya brahmani ramate chittam Nanditi nanditi nandatyeva Nanditi nanditi nandatyeva Nandati nandati nandatyeva. So the meaning of this verse is that, let one revel in yoga or let one revel in bhoga, which is enjoyment or, fulfilling desires, essentially. Let one seek enjoyment in company or in solitude. But one whose mind revels in the self, only they enjoy, and only they enjoy. And this is kind of like the reason why I love this verse is because it encompasses the entire purpose of this work, of why we truly do this work, which is not from a sense of like feeling special or like anything like that, but it's like to really enjoy this world, because that's why we're here, to experience all aspects of life. And the more we can kind of turn our attention to the life source, the more we can enjoy this world. Because the world is nothing but that. So I hope this is a reality for all of us, and keep practicing this subject-object discrimination. This is kind of new, but this is something you can also take to the world, which is when you notice you get lost in the theme of thinking at work or at in your house, when you're talking to somebody and getting too intensely involved in something, you can kind of come out of it. So it's a good way to pull yourself out of the psychological world. So keep doing that. I hope everyone sort of like tries to meditate as well, like at least for 10 minutes every day. If doing, I would say 20 minutes is a pretty good time. Like if you can do 20 minutes a day, that's great, but try to do at least 10 a day, because this work is not going to be very effective if we only leave it to like a theoretical aspect. Like we must build a practice, and we must get rooted in that experience, because that's the purpose. We are trying to like this is a seed, but we have to water and we have to like put in energy there. So one other thing is next week is actually this Sunday is when daylight savings happen in America. So there may be some weird time shifting that may happen for the next class. I'm not sure. I know folks are like, some of you are in the UK and like Europe and Germany. So please look at the time changes, and if you want to join next week, I don't want you to like try to join earlier or later and have that bad experience. So I'll send out the updated time on the WhatsApp group. I know not all of you are on the group, but please try and look at the time. The class is still going to be at 8 a.m. PST, and adjust the time accordingly where you are. So that's it. That's the class. I'm happy to hang out and answer any questions or anything, or if folks want to have a private conversation, I'm willing to do that as well. But
Thank you, Puneet.
Thank you, Cicely.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Puneet. Oh yeah, just a quick question. Where does this verse that you were singing at the end, that's not from the same book, is it?
It is not. So this is from a book called Bhaja Govindam. I can actually share the book.